We heard so far from our health minister that this particular variant is getting out of control and it's becoming more dominant form than the previous virus. Could you please comment on what this dominance means?
Great question. I would like to comment on the choice of words. Two words. One is that out of control. When you say, oh, now it is out of control, we kind of implying that the virus was controlled before. So everything was perfectly under control, and then new version came and it came out of control. That's kind of funny, because I don't think that this virus was ever under control. Maybe we can say in China it's under control, maybe in Australia in between closures, but I don't think it would be fair to say that the United Kingdom, as United States or Russia or whoever else, really does control the virus. But the second thing, the word dominance, really need to be understood in one out of two meanings for this word. It's not the dominance in the sense that virus dominates us or, doing something bad to us because it wanted to do something bad to us. It is dominance in a sense of predominance. So if we measure amount of the virus in population and we say, okay, the old version is found in 70% of cases and the new version is found in 30% of cases. This is still predominance of the old virus. But if this would be flipped, like it happened in the last month or two, we are having the new version becoming predominant, more prevalent, more spread in population. Now, what does it mean? It means that the new virus somehow pushed old virus away. It was able to get the grip of the new hosts faster. So this is exactly the same thing as infectivity. So like those two viruses, old and new, were in competition in the race, and the old virus was able to grab 2 people at a time, and new virus grabbing 4 people at a time. So that's how virus wins. It wins by competing with other viruses, not with us. Virus has no intention to make our life difficult or put us into severe disease. That's not the point. Virus just want to replicate as many copies of itself and move on to the fresh vessel with more energy, not yet depleted. So what we can do as people, we can just sit back and wait till virus will complete its work and move on, or we can fight the virus.
Do we know so far who is more infectious now, who gets this virus now? Are these people who previously had coronavirus or people who are just getting it for the first time? Who gets this new variant of the virus more easily?
Whoever gets the virus is somebody who is available for the virus. So for example, if somebody already had coronavirus, but now immunity of this person is waning, but still because this person think, oh, but I am immortal now, this virus, I already had it and I was just sick mildly and now I have immunity, here's my proof of immunity, I measured my antibodies, and just reckless behavior and you get virus. And also there is a fatigue, like coronavirus fatigue. I'm not sure about UK, but in United States you really could see coronavirus fatigue very often. So people who were very vigilant, they went to their shops and everywhere in masks, and they were really watching themselves, putting gloves on. Now you see people with one glove, with mask which is having nose sticking out. And if in the beginning of epidemics, people were really hard on those people and say, put your mask on, now they, everybody tired.
Absolutely.
Because everybody tired, there is also greater chance of just get the virus. So I wouldn't say that there is some kind of host preference which is going right now.
Could you please comment on the mutation itself? We have a number as N501Y, which says this particular variant mutation. Is it new? Does it appear just in one day, or it's something that should develop in us and then identified somehow?
That is a great question. First of all mutations are happening randomly. That's the nature of mutations. When mutation turn one nucleotide into another in the DNA or RNA sequence, that happen absolutely without any regard to particular place. It does have certain regard to the context, so to other nucleotides which are around, but more or less, for the first glance, we can say that mutations are random. Now, the question which you asked is a very, very important question scientifically, and actually, I just 2 days ago, when this paper was just published, I looked and I read this paper very carefully, and this paper describing English mutation has been containing 2 messages. Unfortunately, the media picked up only on the message number 1. The message number 1, the high infectivity, woe to us, so bad, let's close the borders, Englishmen bad, let's isolate them, things like this, yes? So that's what happened. But this paper had 2 scientific messages, and the second one is of far greater importance than the first one. The second message was saying that the structure of the mutation and this strain, because this mutation which you just called N501Y, this mutation is just it's like label mutation, just the short name, the nickname for the strain, because that's mutation which is found in all variants derived from the strain. In reality, there are 21 different mutations which are within the same string of mutations found in the strain. So we can identify strain by other mutations as well. So there are 21 changes. That's a lot. When you look at those mutations from scientific point of view as a group, you can use them as a signature of the mutation. And if one mutation is random, then when you are looking at the signature of the mutation, the signature bears a footprint of evolution, of virus evolution. And I will not go into the bioinformatics details of how to analyze it, but basically when you compare this virus with 21 mutation with certain signature to other viruses with other signatures, all of them are SARS-CoV-2 variants found all over the world, you would be able to see certain things. For example, you can say how quick the string of mutation was acquired, or whether those mutations were under so-called positive selection, meaning whether there was any selection force which pressed upon the virus to acquire those specific mutation, and that happens by elimination of other mutants. And that was shown in this paper. It is, of course, not a final verdict. It looks like the entire string of mutation happened within one host, one specific person, which brewed the virus in himself or herself for a very long time. Very long time, meaning like say 2 months or so. I'm being conservative.
What does it mean? What does it mean in human language?
That means that somebody was sick with coronavirus for a very long time, actively producing virus. Normal course of COVID is that you get infected on Monday, then a couple of days you feel nothing, on Friday you get fever, then about a week you are miserable, and after this you either recover or the infection goes into the second stage, so there would be problems with the internal organs, lungs mostly, and most likely in the second stage of the disease you would be in the hospital and you would be treated, help you to get rid of the virus. But a lot of people get rid of the virus by themselves. Majority of people have short disease, other large group of people have disease which is prolonged, and altogether on average in population the duration of coronavirus infection would not exceed 3 weeks. But there are some people, some special categories of people who can have this infection for a longer time. Those are people who are immunosuppressed. What does it mean? Without any additional treatment for coronavirus, just on the background state. Some people do have genetic defects, which mean that their immune system is weaker against viruses than other people. And this is not a small amount. Maybe 1 to 2% of population have some kind of inherent problems with immunity. But now, as we are all protected by vaccines, those people can grow up through childhood without any problem, become adult, but they're still vulnerable. If new virus to which we have no vaccine would come, they would be more vulnerable. So this is one group. Another group are people who received specific treatment to shut down their immune system or keep it in the subdued state. Those are people who are receiving, for example, immunosuppressant therapies due to the transplants of the kidney, liver, etc. And this is not a small group of people, it's a substantial group of people. The third group are people who didn't get specific immunosuppression, but they were treated with chemotherapy. For example, the chemotherapy against cancer, especially against liquid cancers like lymphomas and leukemias. Those treatments specifically geared to kill fast proliferating cells, that includes cells of immune system. And yes, immune system does grow back, so people do restore their immunity after chemotherapy, but not completely. Speaking generally, vaccination is not as efficient in the people who get therapy or ever were treated with chemotherapy than in people with the normal state of immune system, even for the flu vaccine and for all other vaccines as well. So those people are naturally predisposed to carry virus in their body for a longer time. They still recover, but they carry virus for a longer time. Also, there are special groups of people with very fancy new types of therapies applied to them. For example, CAR-T chemotherapy, it's immunotherapy against aggressive cancers, and it really does miracles, but there is the price for this miracle, and the price is the changes in immune system imposed by therapy. It was shown in scientific papers recently that those people, if they will get coronavirus, they would remain infectious not for 5-10 days, but for full 2 months. They can pass coronavirus on other people, even if they feel all right. And now the last group is acquired immunodeficiency, for example, due to HIV virus. And this is, of course, really AIDS disease, not just HIV virus, which is controlled by antiretroviral therapy. So if somebody is having HIV and having antiretroviral therapy, which keeps the virus at bay, then the immune system is functioning normally. I'm just specifically talking about people who unfortunately missed antiretroviral therapy, and there are quite a few of those people. At least I know that it is a big problem right now in the United States because many people were on insurance covered their antiretroviral therapy, and then because of the lack of jobs, some people lapsed their insurance and they are not getting the drugs which they used to get. I know that in UK maybe it's not such a huge problem, but it is certainly a huge problem in the United States, and those people able to replicate coronavirus also for a longer time. So what happens when we have coronavirus in people who replicate virus for a longer time? The mutation process within the virus could create more than one population of the viruses. For person, it is the same disease, no change in the symptoms. But the viruses would be slightly different. It's like when you are having one tribe, and then suddenly this tribe separated into 3 different groups, 3 different domains. It would be still the same amount of people, but they would be slightly different from each other. So that happened in immunosuppressive states. Plus, it is happening in people with normal state of immune system in case if they are receiving immunosuppressive therapy, for example, with dexamethasone, with methylpred. This is glucocorticoid hormones. Those hormones are right thing to do. Please don't read me that, oh, don't use those hormones. No, use them, because doctors are prescribing them specifically to cut down probability of the developing of the cytokine storm, or if cytokine storm already there, to short it, right? So after you get this therapy, you would feel better, certainly. But unfortunately, those types of therapy creating the condition in the body for longer persistence of the virus. So people who are getting glucocorticoid therapy, they continue to produce virus for longer times than people who just recovered by themselves. There are 2 other factors of the viral evolution. Remember, the first factor is just persistence of the virus, which makes sure that in your body, not one population of the virus, but 2 or 3 populations of the viruses at the same time. Virus is slightly different one from another. Now, what happened is that we are using some very efficient ways of the antiviral therapy. For example, convalescent plasma. Convalescent plasma is plasma which is extracted from the blood of people who already were sick with coronavirus, were recovered by themselves, and then antibodies from those people active against coronavirus could be collected and given to people who need them right now. Wonderful drug, you know, it's a magic pill. People really do recover very well after convalescent plasma. But what happens there is that convalescent plasma have a couple of antibodies, 2 or 3 types of antibodies, which able to precipitate virus, eliminate it very efficiently. So if we have virus which is exactly fitting to the antibodies, this virus will be killed. But if we have 3, 4, or 5 different types of the virus, and by chance one of those viruses, maybe very minor proportion of all over virus in the body, was mutated in such a way as to not completely bind to those antibodies, this particular virus, the baddest one, would be able to escape. And then we have the virus which is not able to be precipitated by antibodies anymore. Now there is one additional drug which we are using, one of them called remdesivir. This remdesivir was invented by Gilead some time ago. It was used as anti-Ebola treatment. This drug is able to mess up the work of the bacterial polymerase in such a way that polymerase start making mistakes. It is not really aimed at our own DNA polymerase. It's only working with RNA polymerase specific for virus. And that looks great. You know, it's a wonder drug. It attacks the target which is not present in the normal human cells, only in the viral particles. So everything looks good here. There is another drug which is working essentially in the same way. This is favipiravir. This is the drug which has been studied in Japan and used first in Japan under the name of Avigan against coronavirus. It's also efficient. Both of those drugs are efficient. Japanese favipiravir is oral drug, and remdesivir is injection drug, which is used in the hospitals. But the principles of this drug is the same. And favipiravir right now very widely used because there is not enough remdesivir for everybody. So Russia using favipiravir, India does, China does, a lot of Asian countries, and Australia does too. What those drugs are doing? Those drugs are specifically messing up the work of polymerase, and polymerase start to make more mistakes. The idea here is to absolutely overload the virus with a lot of little creeping mutations. So altogether, the virus would be so dysfunctional that it would be dead. That's what we're going to be doing. That means that we have like 1 million of the enemies on the battlefield, and we are bombarding them with something to make them completely crippled. But you know, if we are bombarding the field of 1 million animals, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 which would be crippled but not completely dead, they will crawl away. Yes? That's what's happening with remdesivir and with favipiravir. Actually, those little problems with RNA of the virus, those are mutations. Viruses are overloaded with mutations. And those crippled viruses which got away, they have 1 or 2 or 3 mutations. They were damaged but not killed. So now let's look at what happened in the hospitals. And this is a very important message for people who are actually treating patients, for physicians. I hope maybe physicians are listening to this podcast. First of all, people should get antiviral agents early in the course of their disease. They need to get them as soon as they become symptomatic. When we are applying those drugs as life-saving measures, it of course may save lives, but it's a little bit too late. And those drugs are very often applied to people because also the drugs are expensive, and we don't want to give them to everybody because of rationing. We want to get those drugs only to those who are most sick. Very often that happens that the patient was already treated with other milder drugs before we get to the antiviral drug. And this is exactly opposite sequence of events. In order, if we want to prevent viral evolution, we need to put antivirals first, not the last.
That is a great actually message to our general practitioners, because in the UK we do struggle to get antivirals. When we first get symptoms, we usually are kept for 2 weeks at least to see if the symptoms will develop further before we getting any medication, basically. So the message to get antivirals when we first see the symptoms is really critical, and it must be known to people who do get infections. So thank you very much for this important point, and we hope people will take this message out to their GPs.
I will add one more point. This is also a very important point. This is about convalescent plasma. Because in our clinics right now, convalescent plasma is the last resort, yes? So it's given to people where everything else failed. But the treatment with antibodies, of any kind of antibodies, is most efficient before patients actually develop their own antibodies. From the evolution of the virus, from the point of view of evolution of the virus, when we have already very diverse populations of the virus, due to remdesivir, for example, or due to just too long evolution within the host, and then we apply selection agent, and those are your antibodies, we are actually selecting for new variants able to escape antibodies. So we are producing those mutants in our hospitals. And even if we are trying right now to isolate Great Britain, and maybe even if we would be successful in those cases when some people in Belgium, some people in South Africa, some people somewhere else have the same mutation, if they would be successfully isolated, it would not save us from new mutants, because mutants are homegrown. Every country is growing in the hospitals their own more infectious mutants, escaping immunity, if they apply convalescent plasma last. Convalescent plasma need to be applied first to stop the virus, not after you already created a lot of variations in the virus and then you select for the viruses which are most infectious. If you will, you can do the parallel in your thinking with treatment of the tumors. When we are treating the tumor, we are killing the tumor with chemotherapy. Chemotherapy is like remdesivir. It's putting a lot of mutation in the tumor, and we are trying to fight with tumor. Who will be first? If we kill tumor first, maybe we completely clear it out. But if we kill the tumor not completely, so some cells would be escaping, those cells would be more mutant cells, which then will give rise to metastatic disease. Remdesivir, how it is working upon patients, it is the same as like first generation of chemotherapy, not very efficient. It's like treating tumors with means of 1960s, 1970s, when the first types of chemotherapeutic drugs just came to market. So majority of people were still dying of cancer, they get very short remission. Right now, we are much better at that, so we developed more specific agents, we are getting more remissions, we are changing drugs, but with viral therapy, we are not there yet. We don't have second or third generation or fifth generation antiviral against coronavirus yet. So the old adage of treating tumors as early as possible was put in life because of this phenomena. Because if you start fighting early, you have a chance. If you fighting late, there is no chance. Coronavirus is the same. If you treat with antivirals early instead of waiting, oh, maybe it's not coronavirus, let's wait till your test become positive, Coldrex, Tamiflu, Theraflu, it's all acetaminophen, yeah? So yeah, I mean, you can get through the first few days, but it would be much more difficult to eradicate virus after first few days, which are already passed. And then one more important thing. When the patients treated with all this therapy, with remdesivir, favipiravir, or with convalescent plasma, or both, and also patients which are on steroids to suppress their cytokine storm, when those patients came to hospital, they were very sick. Now, when they get better, we're discharging them home. So they go home, assuming that they would be sitting home, not infecting anybody, but of course they have family members, so family members getting virus from them, they will get this mutated virus.